The following is a paid program sponsored by the friends and partners of Faith Life Now.
Welcome to a very special edition of Drenda, where I'm committed to give you more of what matters most. Today's interview with Congresswoman Michele Bachmann is eye-opening. You don't want to miss it.
That's right. Michele sits on the House Committee for Financial Services and also Intelligence. So this Congresswoman knows what she's talking about.
She does, and everything she's going to share today is going to impact your life, your family, and your finances. You absolutely can't miss this. Let's go to the interview with Congresswoman Michele now. Congresswoman Michele Bachmann, so glad to have you on the program today.
Thank you, and welcome to Minnesota.
It is an honor. Thank you. It's an honor to get to speak with you today. Well, I am so enamored by your biographical history. I've been studying you, and I'm like, 5 children, and that you have had over 20 foster children, and then made a bid for the presidential nomination. How in the world did you get into politics from Mama 5?
Well, when you look at it from this end, it's very different from when you're first starting out. And I became a believer in Jesus Christ when I was 16. My husband did as well. And we had no idea. We didn't map out this strategy that one day I'd run for president. But I became involved in politics really through our foster children. We had homeschooled our biological children, and we'd put them in private Christian school. But the state of Minnesota refused to allow our foster children that option. Their only option was public school. And my husband and I had attended public school, so we weren't against them, but we were appalled by what was coming home in the backpack. So as a mom, I knew if anyone needed a leg up, the foster children did. And so I started getting involved in politics. That led me to the Minnesota State Senate, and then ultimately to the United States Congress. And I was very vocal and very outspoken as a member of Congress, and felt that the Lord was calling me to run for President of the United States. And I'm glad I did, because I made a distinct contribution in the race. I made my signature issue the repeal of Obamacare, because I knew it was sold as on a group of false promises, if you will. And now we're finding out how terribly expensive it is, how much liberty it's going to take away, especially from religious people. It finances taxpayer-funded abortion for the first time, really. And also we have a big problem with denial of care for senior citizens. So I got involved in that, and the positive is that now the Republican nominee, Mitt Romney, has made it very clear that he intends to fully repeal Obamacare. And I was able to endorse Mitt Romney and get behind his candidacy, because he's assured me many times, eyeball to eyeball, that he will repeal Obamacare, and that must be done in this election.
Yes, what all is at stake in this election? There's a lot of things at stake, aren't there?
There are. Everything is at stake. The Republican Party, and I'm not being partisan, but there's 3 things that that party stands for, and it's traditional values, pro-life, pro-marriage, and religious liberties, but it also stands for a very strong national defense. I believe in our United States military, standing up for our military.
Yes.
And also, it also stands for strong fiscal accountability. In other words, balance your budget. Don't spend more money than what you take in. These are all common sense values, but ones that I stand for, and that I believe the majority of Americans stand for. And that's what's at stake in this election. Traditional values are at stake. This is the first president who's ever stood for gay marriage. That's never happened before in the history of our country. This is the first president who's forcing the American people to pay for other people's abortions, even if it violates your moral conscience. Never happened before. And this president has been extremely weak on foreign policy. And the disasters in Cairo and Libya are just a part of that picture. And of course, no other president has put us more in debt. Over $5 trillion in debt under his watch in less than 4 years. That's in half the time, he has doubled the debt of the previous administration. No one has ever seen this kind of spending before. Everything's at stake. Absolutely everything is at stake, including our religious liberty. And Christians have got to pay attention now. I know you have a strong Christian audience, and I just want to let them know that they can make the difference in this election. And I urge them to get out, register, vote, volunteer, give money, do everything you can, because I truly believe the outcome and the balance of our liberties and the future of our nation depends upon this particular election.
Yes, there seems to be a lot of deception and confusion among Christians even. I've heard Christians say, I don't want to get involved in politics because we're not really supposed to do that. And I don't see that as being congruent with our founding forefathers, what they did, the ministers that helped start this nation. What do you say to those people, Michele?
Well, it was people of faith. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for people of faith. It was people of faith who fought in the Revolutionary War, people of faith who fought against slavery. It was a strong Christian movement that was behind ending slavery and building up this country. If believers sit on the sidelines, then it's non-believers who will be the ones making the choices, and they won't necessarily reflect biblical values and biblical choices. Now, the great thing about America is we are the most tolerant nation in the world. We welcome in people of faith and people of no faith at all. But the other thing we need to recognize is whoever's voice is the loudest or whoever shows up will be the ones to make the decisions about the future of the country. And Woody Allen had a famous line where he said, 85% of success is showing up. And one thing that Christians do when they sit out issues and when they sit out being involved in the public square is they cede that very important ground to people who may not share our faith and our values. And so you can be sure that our faith and values will no longer be reflected in public policy if we don't show up. It's absolutely true that if believers show up for this election in November, we will see an outcome that reflects our values. But if believers don't show up, then you have nothing to gripe about and nothing to complain about, because our values, I think, will be imperiled. And so this is it. With everything within me, I am calling on people of faith, please show up at the polls for this election, and not just yourself, bring another 10 and 12 people with you, because that's what will turn the country around. And don't think that one vote doesn't count. In my home state of Minnesota, we have the United States Senate race that gave us Obamacare and gave us Dodd-Frank. That one vote was decided here in Minnesota, and that race was decided by just a couple hundred votes. Wow. Every vote matters, and the course of history can change based on one vote in one state. So it really matters if people show up and vote.
Excellent, excellent. You know, there's a lot of confusion with women who think that Obama and the Obama administration, Obamacare, is for them. Could you address that? Do you really think Obamacare is in the best interest of women?
Not at all. And I see that as a woman. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, and I am just appalled at what I see, because I have an 81-year-old mother. And under the Obamacare guidelines, there's something called the IPAB board. It's 15 people, bureaucrats that the president appoints. They decide who gets health care, who doesn't, what health care choices we have, what we don't. And someone like my 81-year-old mother may not be a good candidate for denial of care. Wow. Whether it's you don't get a hip replacement, you don't get a knee replacement, you don't get cataract surgery, these decisions won't be in our hands. It'll be in some faraway bureaucrat in DC's hands. Can you imagine sitting on the phone trying to get the operation for your mother that your mother needs?
No, we've already seen how the federal government handles the post office and other things. So how is health care going to be benefited?
Exactly. And so for older women or for younger women, again, paying for abortion, and we're just hearing now in some cities they're looking at giving the morning after abortion pill to young girls and not telling their parents. These are not good. These are not pro-women. Plus, we've already seen denial of drugs for breast cancer treatment. That's a decision that's been made in Washington. We don't want this. I want women to have fabulous health care and fabulous futures and jobs and a growing economy. That's why I know without a shadow of a doubt Obamacare hurts women more than anyone. And so that's why I know that we have to repeal that bill.
I know I have friends in Canada who are very unhappy with the socialistic healthcare system.
They're come here to America.
Yes, they do. They're not able to get the health care they want.
Can.
And they'll wait in long lines, and the older they are, I know a gentleman who had a bad surgery who ended up, they wouldn't correct it for 2 years. Imagine having a surgery that went wrong and you've got a pin in your leg and you're in desperate pain, but because of his age and because the government made the decision, instead of him being able to make that decision with his doctor. But what do you see down the road, Michele, and as far as if President Obama is reelected, what do you see our nation looking like?
Well, when it comes to health care, what I see is that we're going to spend a lot more money than what we're spending now, and we're going to get a lot less for it. That's the bottom line. Pay a lot more, get a lot less, and you're going to see, I think the denial of care will mean that people will die and people will suffer. No one wants to see that. I think we're going to see a poorer country. I think we're going to see a country with fewer opportunities for young people. I think we're going to see spikes in the price of energy, as if gasoline at $2.60 or $3.80 a gallon isn't enough. I think we're going to see that cost of energy go up because the president has an anti-American energy policy right now. I think we are seeing relations deteriorate across the world, in particular with the Islamic nations. And I think we're also going to see more pressure for the United States to come under Islamic Sharia law rather than under our Constitution. Just recently, we've seen at the United Nations, the Islamist nations have called on the United States to take away the free speech rights of the American people in favor of Islamist law, Sharia law. So they want us to subvert the Constitution and put Islamist Sharia law over the Constitution. That's what this whole UN Assembly meeting was about.
Really?
I wish our president would have stood up and said, look, I want to make it clear to the world, we will not now and not ever give up our Constitution for Sharia law, Islamic law, or a denial of religious liberties and freedom of speech to the American people. I wish he would have been clear. Instead, there's one line in the president's speech. He said, the future does not belong to those who speak against the prophet, meaning the prophet Muhammad. That is very concerning to me.
Definitely.
When I hear the president of the United States say that. And our president has not stood with Israel. The president would deny that. He would say he has. Clearly he hasn't. He's called on Israel to withdraw to its indefensible, suicidal 1967 borders. If Israel did what President Obama demanded, we would see Israel over. And we know that's the goal of the Islamists in the region. We also know that there's been unprecedented intelligence leaks coming out of the Obama administration. Never have we seen this. So I think I'm very nervous about the future of the United States, our nuclear protections. President Obama wants to reduce our nuclear capability by 80%. Just when a nation like Iran, who wants to destroy Israel and bring down the United States, just when Iran is nuking up under President Obama's watch, President Obama wants to take us down by 80% nuclear capacity. Israel's existence is even at risk right now, and the United States is imperiled on every possible level, Drenda. I wish I had better news, but all of our chips are on November, and I'm calling on believers in Jesus Christ to take this seriously.
Yes.
Don't sit it out, because that's something God has given us all of life, including politics, and I believe that as believers we need to weigh in. And whether you're a faith or no faith at all, for the sake of your family, your parents and your children, weigh in, wake up, and look at the future, not just today.
Excellent, Michele. Thank you so much. Excellent.
Thank you.
We'll be back with Congresswoman Michele Bachmann in just a moment. I want to ask her about the Democratic National Convention.
Coming up next on Drenda.
It was the pastors at the beginning of our country who really were the backbone of the revolution. They preached righteousness. They called on the people to get involved, and that's how we had the revolution. So I'm calling on pastors, preach about marriage and the family, preach about wise stewardship, and people will make the right decision.
For your best gift of any size, Drenda wants her friends and partners to have this brand new 2-disc set, Silence is Not an Option. Drenda and husband Gary team up to share how righteousness exalts a nation and what we need to do to regain morality and God's blessings in our land.
If we are not willing to stand up and speak out for our deeply held convictions, we have to ask ourselves, do we really believe them?
Silence is Not an Option is one series you'll listen to over and over again. And today, for your ministry gift of $59 or more, in addition to this 2-disc series, you'll also receive the new American Standard Version of the Founder's Bible by well-known historian David Barton.
This is the most practical, life-changing book you will see. This will transform a generation. It will transform a nation.
This is a limited time offer, and for your best ministry gift of $59 or more, we'll rush this package to your home. The Founder's Bible is a keepsake hardback edition that will not only inspire you with the living Word of God, but will also demonstrate the godly principles our nation was founded on. Included are colorful illustrations, quotes, and history, all pointing to a sovereign God whose Spirit gave direction to these great leaders that were at the forefront of our country. Don't wait. Request this special offer.
Congresswoman Michele Bachmann has been sharing with us some very eye-opening things going on in our nation, and that's why silence is not an option. We want you to know how righteousness exalts a nation and what you need to do and what I need to do to make a difference along with the Founder's Bible. Let's go back to Congresswoman Michele Bachmann's interview. She's going to share with you what you can do to make a difference. We're back with Congresswoman Michele Bachmann, and Michele, what did you think of the Democratic National Convention this year? We've been talking about the difference between Republicans and the platform in the party and the Democratic platform.
It was shocking. I think we've never seen anything like it before, and I think if people weren't paying attention, they need to know what happened. I was in the convention at Tampa. I wasn't, that was the Republican convention. I wasn't at the Democrat convention in Charlotte, but I saw it on television, and we saw the platform. If your viewers are supporters of Israel, they'll be shocked. Because for the first time, the Democrats came out with a platform that did not have the support of Israel that it used to have formerly. And I think that's, again, very indicative of where the president's coming from. The president saw the platform. The president approved the platform. Yes. So this is the Obama way, and this is no secret. They aren't keeping this away from the American people. They're very obvious. The other thing that they left out was any mention of God. The word God wasn't even in the platform. Shameful. Also, Jerusalem wasn't present in the platform. And for people who didn't see this, there was a vote taken on the floor of the convention because this became embarrassing for President Obama and embarrassing for the Democrats. So they were going to insert the word God, not in terms of who God is, but they just were going to put in the term God-given potential. So it's demoting God even more. And they had the vote, and the vote failed to put God and Jerusalem back in the platform. So they took a vote a second time. The vote failed a second time. They took a third vote on putting God and Jerusalem back in the platform, and it failed a third time, but the fellow who was at the front counted it as though they had said yes. So
really?
this was
well, then I saw them boo it when they made it.
They booed. That's right. The crowd was booing when God and Jerusalem were added back to the platform. So don't be deceived.
Right. Shouldn't that tell people what the real motive behind it?
This is the real values and the real view. Because don't forget, this is an administration that recognizes every nation's capital in the world. You know, over 120 countries in the world. Every capital we recognize. There's only one capital that the Obama administration doesn't recognize. That's Jerusalem.
Really?
And the Obama administration has been asked over and over, do you recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital? No, they do not. They do not. I'll tell you, that is serious business, because God says in His Word that Jerusalem is the eternal capital of Israel. It is not to be divided. And in 1967, Jerusalem was united. And we need to stand for Israel, and we need to stand for Jerusalem.
Yes, and we want God's blessing.
We want God's blessing. And that's why I firmly believe that we need to move the United States Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and keep it in Jerusalem to tell the world that we, the United States, have Israel's back. Because it says in the book of Genesis that those who bless Israel will be blessed. I believe that we need to take God at His word in Genesis, and we need to bless Israel, because we as a nation have been blessed.
I agree. What would you say to the women of our nation, moms like yourself, like me, that have stood for family, stood for the sanctity of marriage? How can they make a difference? What can they do? You're outspoken, wonderful, well-spoken, I should say, woman of God. There are women of God out there that are being silenced. What would you say to those women?
You are so valuable. You are so valuable. And we need your voice now more than ever. God raised up Deborahs throughout the Bible to stand strong. God used women, strong women throughout the Bible. This is our time to stand up for our mothers, our fathers, our children, our neighborhood. And so I'm calling on women to go down to your local phone bank, go lit drop, do something. We have about somewhere around 40 days. It's not much time. Pray for our nation, fast for our nation, but work. It's not enough just to vote. Go through your own email list. You have a contact list. Email everyone on your contact list. Text them, phone them. Tell them, look, I'm going to vote. This is who I'm voting for. This is why. Maybe write a letter to all of your email list friends. Send that email letter out and say, this is who I'm voting for. Here's why. If you don't think you're good with words or you don't understand the issues, if it's even only 3 sentences, just say, this is the most important election of my lifetime and of our children and of the church. And we've got to stand up for religious values, and I am, and then send it out and sign your name. Make sure you're registered to vote and vote. But bring your family together, your adult children, your neighbors, people at work. You can put a voter guide out at your church to let people know where the candidates stand on issues. Send a little bit of money to a local candidate. There's a lot we can do, but don't wake up the morning after the election and think, oh, if only I would have done this much more, maybe we would have won. Again, I come from the state where just by a little over 100 votes, we lost a U.S. Senate seat. And that one Senate seat gave us Obamacare and gave us Dodd-Frank, which is killing the credit industry. So much happened because we lost one seat by a little over 100 votes. Please, please get involved. Every vote counts, especially if you're from Florida and Ohio and the state of Virginia and Wisconsin and Michigan. These are swing states, and there's other swing states out there, or even if you're not from that state. For instance, I've got a very tough re-election this time. People can phone from home. They don't, if they want to see me re-elected, they can go to my website, michelebachmann.com. They can donate money. They can volunteer for me, no matter what state or country they live in, and you can phone from home and you can call to get people out to vote. There's a lot we can do, but get involved and start a prayer vigil in your church. I believe in intercessory prayer. I'm an intercessor myself. Get down on your knees and do what 2 Chronicles 7:14 says. Cry out to God, confess your sins, turn from your sins. In other words, stop walking in your known sins and ask God to heal our land. He will do it. We can trust the Lord to be true to His word. But start a prayer ministry in your church from now to the next 40 days.
What can pastors do? Because there's always controversy.
Preach
righteousness.
Preach righteousness from the pulpit. And no church has ever been prosecuted for speaking out about an election. Don't let yourself be silenced by the ACLU and by what I consider an unconstitutional law to silence the pulpits. There's freedom of speech everywhere in this country except the pulpit. That's against our United States Constitution. Every pastor needs to preach righteousness from the pulpit. Remember, it was the pastors at the beginning of our country who really were the backbone of the revolution. They preached righteousness. They called on the people to get involved, and that's how we had the revolution. So I'm calling on pastors, preach about marriage and the family, preach about wise stewardship, and people will make the right decision.
Yes, I believe that. I believe we have an opportunity. God's given us an opportunity to choose righteousness. Righteousness exalts a nation.
Choose ye this day whom you'll serve. Deuteronomy 6, read that. And that lays out before us the promises of God and the ways that we can choose. And this is our time in America to choose. And so don't let it pass.
Yes, I heard one man of God say, it will be the church that decides the the destiny of our nation.
It will be.
It's a responsibility. It
always has been.
Yes, we are the salt. We are the light.
That's
so
right.
we need to be that. We don't hide it. We don't want to hide it from. You know, as we're closing, Michele, I just want to ask you the relationship between economics and morality, because a lot of people say this election and what's going on in our nation is all about the economy. Is it really about the economy as much as it is about the morality?
Well, wise people have said, and that would be George Washington, that a nation is built upon religion, which is our faith. That's the first building block. The second building block are morals. What are the morals that come out of our religious faith? And from there, virtue. What are the virtues of our nation? And from there, when you have that rock solid biblical basis, that's where you build prosperity. Prosperity comes out of wise virtues that emanate from morals, that come from a strong biblical religious faith. This is nothing to be ashamed of. This is something to be proud of.
Yes.
So we need to stand for that faith, and that's how our nation is prosperous and free.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Michele. And I wish you the very, very best in the election and in your future. And thank you for taking a stand of righteousness as a woman of God, a mother like you, a mother that makes a difference. Thank you for joining us.
Amen. If people have more questions, they can go to michelebachmann.com. Thanks, Drenda.
Thank you. Reading from David Barton's Founders Bible, Proverbs 14:34 says, "Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a disgrace to any people." We see the wages of sin at work in our nation, and we must not remain silent. We must step up and speak God's truth. Throughout history, men and women have done that and have guarded our freedoms.
That's right. The Bible makes it very clear in Jude that we need to contend for the faith. We need to uphold that righteous standard and put that out there. Stay in the fight. Christians need to be in politics, and silence is not an option definitely outlines that.
That's right. If you'll do what's right, God can protect you and your family. Thanks for joining us on Drenda Today.
For your best gift of any size, Drenda wants her friends and partners to have this brand new 2-disc set, Silence is Not an Option. Drenda and husband Gary team up to share how righteousness exalts a nation and what we need to do to regain morality and God's blessings in our land.
If we are not willing to stand up and speak out for our deeply held convictions, we have to ask ourselves, do we really believe them?
Silence is Not an Option is one series you'll listen to over and over again. And today, for your ministry gift of $59 or more, in addition to this 2-disc series, you'll also receive the new American Standard Version of the Founders Bible by well-known historian David Barton.
This is the most practical, life-changing book you will see. This will transform a generation. It will transform a nation.
This is a limited time offer, and for your best ministry gift of $59 or more, we'll rush this package to your home. The Founders Bible is a keepsake hardback edition that will not only inspire you with the living Word of God, but will also demonstrate the godly principles our nation was founded on. Included are colorful illustrations, quotes, and history, all pointing to a sovereign God whose Spirit gave direction to these great leaders that were at the forefront of our country. Don't wait. Request this special offer. This has been a paid program sponsored by the friends and partners of Faith Life Now.